and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who has at least one fewer teeth than he did the last time you heard him. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Well, combined it's one tooth. Yes, yeah. I have parts of three teeth missing.
So we don't often talk about sort of our indoor league games, but there was a big...
We learned a lesson from when we used to do that.
Yeah, but there was a big incident last night where Taylor took, I believe, a shoulder to the mouth just before half-time. Yeah. And then I saw him go to the floor. I was like, oh, no, he's going to be down for a minute. It's going to be bad. And I saw him get up, spit a tooth out, take it to the sideline, then come back on looking real angry, and then score just before halftime. You came back on angry and determined to score. Right?
I wasn't pleased.
You take my tooth, I take your goals.
Exactly. That was the plan. It really was. I just wanted to score one more goal, and then I realized I was bleeding somewhat profusely from the inside of my mouth. So that was the end of that.
So I genuinely, I also had a kind of a selfish moment. I mean, first I was like, oh, my friend, his face is hurting. And then I was like, oh, my profession, what if he can't talk? So I'm really glad to sort of hear your voices.
And then you crossed your fingers and hoped? Is that what it was?
No, I'm
do it all myself.
So there is some damage, right? But it seems like you're able to talk.
Yeah, I've already been to the dentist once. More to come. Is what I've been reliably informed. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, but
yeah, it's good times.
Sorry. Well,
who needs teeth?
All
they do is shield your incredibly painful nerves. Is what I've learned.
So you have fewer teeth, but CONMEBOL would like more World Cup spots.
That's outstanding.
That is a segue.
That is outstanding, my friend. Indeed. That's what's being reported today by the AP from a Brazilian newspaper, I believe.
Is it Globo Esporte again?
I think it is.
They're on it.
A formal letter was handed to Gianni Infantino, signed by CONMEBOL President Alejandro Dominguez and the region's 10-member associations, asking for the 2022 World Cup to be expanded to 48 teams.
So that's the Qatar World Cup, which right now is planned to be 32 teams in November 2022. They want 48.
Yep.
Do they say why?
I believe the generic statement.
This is weird, right? This strikes me as a weird request for just one confederation to say, hey, we want more teams at a World Cup.
It's odd. It is definitely odd. I have not seen the letter. I saw the AP article about it, and the quick summary was essentially competition is good. The more teams that can compete, the better the tournament will be. It's that sort of.
But is there a subtext of the more CONMEBOL teams that get there, the better?
I suppose, except as far as I recall, the expanded format is likely to only give them one more team. Or I guess
really?
what do they get? 4.5 now? 5.5?
Yeah, 4.5.
4.5, so they'd get 6, I think, total. So I guess they get 1.5 more. So maybe that's part of it. There was a little bit of a link there because Dominguez, the CONMEBOL president, is Paraguayan. Paraguay did not make the World Cup, so there was some argument maybe he was happy to push this.
Was he how about more at the 2018 World Cup?
Yeah, that's where it goes next.
More red and white stripy teams.
Yes. But I mean, I don't know if this goes anywhere. It seems like this is the week where there's just been crazy bids and crazy numbers being thrown around.
There's a lot of other odd FIFA news that we don't even have time to get into, and we don't really know the details, so we'll leave it to another day.
But in the meantime, it would be problematic if they entertained this idea because I believe Qatar, because of the change, as you said, to November, December, 28-day schedule means they're not going to really struggle to fit in 48 teams. They might even struggle to fit in 32 teams.
And you need more venues if you go to a 48-team World Cup, right?
2026 potential bid nations or host nations, since you've got a lot of slashes in some of these, have been told they need 12 venues. Yep. Qatar building 8.
Right. So the first, maybe I've got a conspiratorial mind. Maybe it's your influence.
I don't think you do.
The first thing I was thinking is this is the beginnings of sort of a run around Qatar to sort of take the World Cup away from them, to find a reason to take the World Cup away from them, right? And maybe it's convenient to say, hey, let's do a 48-team World Cup. Oh, it doesn't quite fit in Qatar. Maybe we need to move it somewhere else.
I mean, there is the ongoing embargo because initially there was some talk that maybe what they would try to do is open it up and include more Middle East countries into that World Cup.
So a 48-team co-hosted by Qatar, Saudi Arabia, maybe United Arab Emirates?
Yeah. Yeah, that could work really well, right?
So yeah, you said the word embargo. There's a massive diplomatic crisis happening right now, right?
Yeah, I was just impressed that was off the top of the dome from Daryl Grove that he listed the countries leading the embargo. Well done, my friend.
I follow international events.
I'm just saying, it's good stuff.
So I even follow some non-soccer related international events.
Some, but yeah, 9 months did we say? 9 months it's been.
That's
ongoing?
How long the embargo's been going. Yeah.
So it seems unlikely that that would just come to an end so that a bunch of countries could host the World Cup. Maybe that's what they're thinking is that. hosting a few games could get Saudi Arabia to say, like, never mind, we don't care about geopolitical issues.
So you think CONMEBOL, this is like a world peace move from CONMEBOL
no,
to reunite the Middle East?
Not at all, but I'm sure that's how they might try to spin it. No, I think that maybe there is a possibility that this is FIFA and potentially even Qatar coming together and saying, like, look, there's a lot of drama going on. There's a lot of problems with this World Cup. Maybe you can't say we can't host it. Maybe we don't want to physically take it away from you because then we look like we made a mistake. But if we decide to expand it, then you can say, well, we can't do that. That's not what we agreed to. We can say, well, look, we're just looking out for the interests of our member nations.
And everyone can kind of walk away with their heads held high, or at least pretend to.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
It's also possible, I have not looked at this, that the next elections for CONMEBOL president are coming up, and maybe Dominguez wants to make it seem like, hey, look, I fought for us at the international stage.
Okay, so we've got 6 listener questions today that we're going to move on to, but here's the weird thing to me is percentage-wise, CONMEBOL does about as well as anyone in terms of getting their members to the World Cup, right? There's only 10 member nations of CONMEBOL, South America, and either 4 or 5 of them make the World Cup. That's a pretty good
45% of your member states.
Pretty good success rate. Yeah, 50% this time.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go, 45% minimum, and then increasing to 60 potentially. Yeah, I think they should be pretty pleased.
I'm going to say 40% minimum. Okay, because you can't get half a team there.
I mean, not with that attitude. So, I mean, we shall see. It might just be that they're trying to show their member nations that they're like have their interests at heart. That might be what Dominguez is doing, or it might be part of a larger plan to either get an actually expanded 2022 World Cup, or maybe see who else is out there.
I think Bolivia just needs to get better. Okay, so we're going to move on to today's 6 listener. I'm saying, imagine being the nations that don't qualify when you've got the massive expansion.
I would be curious to see, though. I mean, first of all, yes, that will be a bummer. I think that there was a lot of jokes about, like, expand it to 90, expand it to 151, and that generally corresponded with the ranking of the team that person was talking about. It would be interesting, though, if they did try to expand it and then open it up to other nations, if Morocco might be interested, and then what would that do to their 2026 bid, potentially, if they were like, Middle East, North Africa, you guys can all host together, because some Middle Eastern countries probably aren't going to want to work with Qatar.
Do you think there may be some machinations behind the scenes?
You never know.
All right, well, we'll follow this story and see, because some things develop and you can see this was the beginning of something, and some things just fizzle out.
Yes.
So this could go either way, I think, right now.
Well, I'm excited to talk about it because it allows me the opportunity to pronounce Qatar all of the many different ways that you can pronounce that country.
You ready for listener questions?
Why not?
We have 6 today. I'm excited for each and every one of them.
Alrighty.
But first on the list is Peter Venturato. Peter Venturato wants to know, what is the origin of the away goal being weighed more? Why is it still a thing? Would you prefer for all goals to be weighed the same during home and away fixtures? All right, so before you answer, Taylor, let's scale this back. Peter's asking about away goals, which, for example, is the reason that Roma went through in the Champions League yesterday. They lost 4-1 away to Barcelona. They won 3-0 at home. So Barcelona have no away goals. Roma have 1 away goal. So the 4-4 draw becomes a victory for Roma.
So 4-4 on aggregate, but the 1 away goal means Roma go through.
What is the origin of that being used?
Sure. It was first introduced in the 1965-1966 Cup Winners' Cup. Would you like to explain what that is, or should we just let that be for another day?
So right now we have the UEFA Champions League and for basically league winners and second, third, fourth place player. And then you have the Europa League for teams that are lower down. There used to be the Cup Winners' Cup, which was if you won the FA Cup or the French Cup or the German Cup, every winner was entered into the Cup Winners' Cup. It was exactly what it sounded like. You win your domestic cup, you go into the Cup Winners' Cup tournament. It was kind of the third most popular European tournament, and it was essentially when they sort of redid the Champions League and the Europa League, they did away with the Cup Winners' Cup. I can't remember the year. So it was like a Europa League style tournament.
Well, I can say for sure that it was after 1966, because this was the year that they first started using the away goals rule, where they basically made that the tiebreaker, and the goal there was to incentivize attacking play away from home, because away teams would essentially go on the road and then sit back and not try to do anything, because their entire goal was not to lose on the road, so then they could go home for the second leg and then go and play attacking soccer.
Right, so the idea of incentivizing away goals was to open games up.
Indeed, except I think that I think there's a thing called the law of unintended consequences, but if there's not, then I'm going to say that it seems to always apply to things that FIFA try to do or UEFA try to do or whomever, because with FIFA, when they tried to do the golden goal, it ended up, because it was this idea that everybody will be going forward and it will be so dramatic, and what ended up happening was nobody wanted to lose on a sudden death goal, so everybody sat off.
Right. It made people more scared to concede as opposed to more inclined to take the risk and score.
Exactly. Yeah. And that same thing sort of happened here, where essentially now once you're incentivizing that away team, particularly in the first leg, going out and attacking, well, then the home team really doesn't want to concede a goal, because if you concede a goal or two, that tie could be over in the first 20 minutes. So then it's the home team that is sometimes a bit more defensive, and the away team can also be sometimes defensive as well, and it leads to a very cagey first leg more often than not.
But I think the answer to the second part, why is it still a thing, is because it hasn't been proven that it doesn't
exactly.
work.
That's
that makes sense.
The thing,
We don't have any counter evidence for what would happen without the away goal rule. And I think it still does hold that enough teams attack at home still that the balance is correct. Because in the example we gave, Barcelona won 4-1.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Barcelona didn't defend at home.
They did not. And I think it's also worth noting, I hope people have listened to this far without tweeting, because it is also worth noting.
I guarantee they have not.
A big part of this was to cut down the number of matches and minutes played. Because if you're constantly having to do replays because, it was 1-1 away, but then they tied 0-0 at home, so they tied 2 games, so we got to play a third game, or we got to have extra time. You've got more and more games racking up. That means more minutes. It means a longer season. It causes problems for fixture congestion. So this was also aimed at cutting down the number of minutes and the number of matches people had to play. So that then factors into it as well.
I think I also read in the season before, you said it was 66 it was introduced?
Yes.
In the season before, one game had been decided by a coin flip because they couldn't find another way.
That's not great.
I guess nobody had thought about penalty kicks at that time, but so it was a way of deciding games that previously they were unable to decide. Okay, the final part of the question, would you prefer for all goals to be weighed the same during home and away fixtures? So Peter's essentially asking, if it was up to you and I, would we get rid of the away goal rule?
I think, forgive me for this, but my answer is, I would like to say sometimes I want to get rid of it, because there are some times when I really am enjoying a game, and then, they needed, they lost 3-0, they need to win this game 3-0 if they want to make something happen. Oh, they've tied it, and then, they've conceded 1. I'm not even specifically talking about Juventus Real Madrid, but that's what just happened. But, then suddenly that one goal happens, and it's over, because now that other team has to score 2 more goals, or what have you, otherwise the match is done. And I get frustrated there. But for every one of those...
A good example would have been the Manchester City-Liverpool game.
Yeah.
So 3-0 to Liverpool at home. Man City hadn't scored an away goal.
Yeah.
But then there's the drama of, can Man City pull off this comeback?
Yep.
And they needed 3 goals. But then there was always the danger that if Liverpool scored, then suddenly they needed 5 goals.
Yep.
And what's the word? Instinctively, that feels unfair.
Yeah.
Because if you can pull back a 3-goal deficit, but it's 4-1, and you don't get the reward, even though you've pulled back a 3-goal deficit. And those are the moments when I would like to remove it.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Because there are moments when I would like to remove it, but then there's other ones where, your team or a game you enjoyed, they lose 2-1 on the road, but they got that away goal, so now 1-0 at home will do it, and it leaves it a little bit more open. I just think whenever it means the second fixture is almost a dead rubber, or at least can be perceived to be a dead rubber, is when I start to get frustrated.
Is it a bit like how... I think we would generally agree that traffic lights are a good idea, so that people have to stop and cars don't go into each other. But there are also moments when you pull up to a red light and there's no one else around, and you just think, why can't I just roll straight through here?
What are you doing with your life traffic light? Yeah, exactly.
But you know what I'm saying? Yeah. There are just moments when it shouldn't. It feels like it shouldn't exist, but maybe in the grander scheme, it's better that it does.
I think so.
I definitely feel that way about traffic lights. I'm not sure I feel 100% that way about away goals.
I'm with you on that. I would say the one thing that I do find very frustrating, and we did a little bit of research before, I think it's UEFA do this, at least in the Champions League, that the away goals rule continues on even into extra time.
Yeah.
So say Liverpool win at home that first leg 3-0. Say Man City somehow manage to win 3-0 at home. So now you've got 3-3 on aggregate, and you go and then you have extra time. But if Liverpool score in extra time, the way things stand, Man City would then have to score 2 because Liverpool have scored an away goal.
Yeah, so the argument is that the other team gets an extra 30 minutes at home, and therefore that balances out the other team getting an extra 30 minutes to try and score an away goal. I'm not convinced of that at the time.
No, and especially I think that's when the problem of the away goal comes in, because then the attacking team isn't going to want to stretch themselves or really go for it because then they run the risk of leaving themselves open. The home team in that situation. The away team then is going to sit back too because they don't want to concede, and suddenly you've got both teams basically playing for penalties.
Here's what I'd like to see then, to answer Peter's question. I'd like to see an experiment.
Yep.
Because, as I understand it, when away goals were introduced into the Cup Winners' Cup, they were introduced into the Cup Winners' Cup because to introduce it into the European Cup would have been sort of too big of a tournament to introduce it in straight away, right? Because didn't it go Cup Winners' Cup and it slowly spread through the other tournaments as it was proven to be somewhat effective?
I believe you're correct.
So rather than just saying, UEFA saying, okay, for the 2019 season, we're not going to do away goals.
Yeah.
And then if it turns out, because we don't know, right? If it turns out that removing the away goal thing does make teams just defend when they go away and suddenly every game is turgid, it'd be a problem. But maybe they could just try it in, say, the Europa League. Yeah. Or sort of not the Champions League. That make sense?
Or maybe a number of cards issued for dissent. And then right there, that stops players from complaining. There we go. That's my tiebreaker. It's not really. I'm fine with away goals for now. I would like to see a few wrinkles, but that's it. Next question comes from Billy Harding, who asks, how much is a manager at fault if a team is creating chances and getting shots on target, but not producing wins?
I do know Billy is a Southampton fan, so that may be some of the thinking behind this question. I weirdly think a lot.
I 100% agree.
If it's regular. Maybe if it's a one-off where your team is like dominated and had a lot of like really high-quality chances and you've come up against like, David De Gea on form, then suddenly I'll think that's not the manager's fault.
But you can only come up against David De Gea on form once or twice a season, at least in the league.
So over the spread of a season, if your team is getting a lot of shots at goal but not scoring, then I would say that there's a bigger problem, and it's probably the quality of chances, the quality of shots you're getting is something to do with the approach that your team is taking. And therefore that kind of is the manager's fault.
I absolutely agree. Because, you have like high percentage, low percentage shots, you've expected goals. Simply getting 15 shots on target, but all of them were from outside the box and all of them were caught by the goalkeeper. Might mean shots are taken. It doesn't mean they're good shots.
I think that's an extreme example, but you can also see there's sort of different variations of that. I'd even say maybe Red Bulls playing Chivas de Guadalajara in the CONCACAF Champions League semi-second leg is kind of one of those situations where it was such a sort of goal-mouth scramble where you allowed all the chances you had were with all the Chivas defenders still in there ready to defend, as opposed to creating some really open, clear-cut Bradley Wright Phillips is one-on-one with the keeper with 20 yards to spare. Because you haven't created that kind of chance, that's kind of your fault for not creating that kind of chance.
Yes, you're not the manager's fault? Is that what we're going with?
Yeah.
Because I agree, because I would also say...
To some extent the manager's fault, but because he sets the approach.
But you know when you sub into a game, I know you usually start, but if you sub into a game and it's a very hard-fought game, there's that feeling of suddenly like, whoa, I'm in this. Like this is a... physical affair. I got to be on point right away. I think it can be really difficult. What's the saying? To see the forest for the trees. If you're in there, the world-class players certainly can see some patterns of play, can see spaces opening, can occupy that space, can figure stuff out. But it is the manager's, the coach's job to see everything that's happening on the field and to figure out, we keep crashing against that defense. It's because we're trying to force the way through the middle. So let's spread the ball wide, and then we'll create some overlaps or create some like 2v1 situations. We'll exploit those. It is up to the manager to find a way to break down defenses when what you're trying to do in the primary approach isn't working.
What if, to take Billy's question a step further, if the quality of chances are actually quite high. If they have a high expected goal sort of rating.
We call this the Christian Benteke factor.
Right, the team has created wonderful chances, but not just one individual player is missing them, but the whole team is somehow failing to score good chances. Is that still the coach's fault, or can you just look at it and say, whoa, this team just broke several mirrors?
I think genuinely
7 games bad luck.
I think genuinely things can be two things. I think that you can have players who are having a terrible run of form, but I think you can also have managers who think, okay, Christian Benteke isn't scoring, I'll put this guy in. But then that guy isn't some big target striker. It's a pacey striker who runs in behind. So then it takes a couple games to figure out, loving balls to him isn't working. So now we got to change everything we're doing. And then you can start to change too much and tinker too much. And that can be a problem.
It's not so much about tactics. It's more about sort of it's part of a coach's job to know, okay, this striker it's not working out for him this week or last week or the week before, but he's doing the right things. I've got faith in him. I'm going to stick with him. Versus when he needs to be like, all right, it's not happening for this guy ever.
Yeah.
Needs to take. So that's part of the job, right?
Yeah.
It's a really hard part of the job, but that's why they get paid the pressurized bucks.
There it is. And I think your point there is one of the points you made there is key, which is that like if you're giving him the ball in really good chances where he should be scoring and isn't. Because I do think sometimes there's that inclination to say, oh, we've got this big target striker, he's not scoring. We got to get him. We got to sell him. He's not doing the job. But if he's getting horrible service or it's just like lumped into the channel and he has to run onto it, then focusing on the attack when you should be maybe looking at why don't we have any sort of build-up play that gets multiple attacking players within goal with possession.
That's interesting.
That's the other. So I think I would say, again, it goes back to the manager. It's his or her job to figure out how to make that problem go away. And if they're not doing it, then they're not doing it.
And to go one level deeper, a bit more granular, it's also about what's happening in practice, right?
Yep.
There may be some weird sort of finishing drills that are being done that aren't helpful, or a finishing drill that's not being done that would be helpful. That's all part of the equation as well, right? Of why chances are not being scored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's all well said, my friend.
Also, don't sell Sadio Mane.
That too.
Next question is from Matt Cuss. Matt Cuss, I think this might be the oddest question we've ever
I don't even know what to make
on
of this.
this show, but I'm weirdly interested by it. Matt wants to know, what would Brek Shea have to do to get called up again to the US men's national team? What position would he play? All my friends are, quote, Shaters, unquote, Shea haters, and I can never have a legit discussion about my favourite player.
Just to clarify, if somebody doesn't like a player who is underperforming or hasn't performed that well, that doesn't make them a hater. That makes them correct.
Well, to be fair, we haven't watched Brek Shea that closely over the last couple of years to say that he's in terrible form or something like that, right? I know he scored a couple of weeks ago, but he also has been dropped a few times by Vancouver.
How's that equivocating going for you, Daryl?
So far, so good. Till I was called out on it. It was going just fine. Well, here's the question, right? When we think about the US men's national team rosters or starting 11s, very few people ever... I mean, maybe there's just Matt Cuss and friends of Brek Shea.
I really want to know why Matt Cuss likes Brek Shea so much.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that sarcastically. I mean that sincerely, because I'm assuming there was a point. Maybe he was an FC Dallas fan. Maybe it was when he wore the like lime green genie pants. And he was like, this guy is eccentric and I like him.
Well, actually, I like Brek Shea for that reason. This is a weird thing, but I really like soccer players who don't just do the classic traditional soccer player thing, right? Like Brek Shea has this whole thing where he does some painting,
and fishes.
He likes to spend time away from everything when he's not playing soccer. I know he's like in his. I'm not sure where he lives, but in his house. Oh, this was back when he was with Dallas, I think. But he would find a place that's far away from everything and just have some quiet time. And he wears wacky clothes and he's into art. I mean,
I think it was when he was with Orlando. I think
that
maybe.
Makes sense.
And he did like the celebration. That was like the artist he liked. If my voice went weird, it's because I covered my mouth because that was the way he celebrated.
So I like him too.
Yeah.
But I would not pick him in a US men's national team, even if we were going like 5 teams deep.
Yep.
And the reason for me is that I think... I don't like to say this because, again, I do like him. I think he's kind of a one-dimensional player in that he's strong and he's fast and he's very competitive. When he's on, he's sort of someone who's not going to lose a fight for the ball. But I think of him as a very straight-line player. Like he plays on the left wing when I've seen him and just goes in a direct straight line down the wing and then swings across in. Or maybe he cuts in and shoots, but there's not much of an element of surprise. And I feel like it's quite easy to counter that. And for one thing, like so for example, when he went over to England and played briefly for Stoke, Birmingham City and Barnsley, you're coming up against some really good players. They can counter that quite easily. 2, you cannot waste possession in international soccer, right? So if you've got somebody who's just willing to charge with the ball and not sort of be a clever passer, circulate the ball type player, you're not going to do as well. So I think that's... So what he would have to do to get called up to the US men's national team is become a different type of player.
I mean, that's kind of what I have. Because my honest answer is... with the way Major League Soccer works, with the fact that we've got the January camp, that there is an emphasis occasionally on calling in MLS-based players, I think if he put together 6 months of consistent starts and like quality performances, I think he's back in consideration for January. But I agree with you completely that the other thing he would have to do is improve the areas of obvious deficiency or that have been areas of obvious deficiency in the past. So straight line dribbling, I think it was Albert, it might have been Peyton.
It was Albert
who made that joke that he runs in straight lines and that is what he does. To see him make like slightly more clever runs or just change it up a little bit to see him have better control and decision making. I remember I wasn't here for it, but as I recall, there was a game where he was like, it was maybe one of the worst games that a player playing for the U.S. had ever had. Where it's like,
I think it was a Gold Cup.
He like dribbled out of bounds and like received the ball out of bounds and made very questionable decisions, and it felt like it was a pressurized moment. And in that moment, he kind of didn't rise to the occasion. So I think he would have to prove that he has the ability to do that as well.
The problem is he's 28. So it's not as if this is a 20-year-old Brek Shea who has sort of room to grow. I think the 28-year-old Brek Shea is the Brek Shea that's going to be Brek Shea.
Yeah, I think so. But I think, though, this isn't necessarily what you're saying, but I did initially have this idea that like maybe he needs an image correction a little bit, but I don't think he does because I think he is who he is.
Yeah.
I think
and again, I like him. I like his image.
And I think the issue is that you can be strange if you're good. Like that's kind of what it comes down to is like Mario Balotelli, when he was scoring goals, it was kind of like, he burned his house down. But he did score like 3 against Manchester United, so it's fine. So like I do think that there is that thing, but when you're kind of an eccentric person and you're also not performing, there can be that case of the manager thinking, I don't really need that right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. And also there's lots of options for the US men's national team, right? Mm-hmm. On the left now, there's Timothy Weah, Kenny Saif, all that is going on. It's going to be very hard for Brek Shea to get anywhere near it.
It is. And I would say the final thing, though, from what I've read of him and from the interviews I've seen, I'm also not sure that he cares that much.
And I
don't mean that like, he doesn't care about soccer. I think it's just more so that he's like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Like he seems like a person who is kind of not too worried about, am I going to make another appearance for the U.S. national team? Could I go to a World Cup? Could I go to a Gold Cup? I think he's just sort of like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Mm-hmm. If I don't, if I do, whatever.
Maybe he's doing it right and we're all doing it wrong.
Almost certainly.
Except for pants choice.
Well, that too.
Today's show is sponsored by Brek Shea's pants. Not really. Today's show is sponsored by Roughneck Scarves.
You could make a scarf out of those.
You probably could.
They seem like they were a nice material.
But Roughneck Scarves are also nice material, and they are the official scarf providers for US Soccer, Major League Soccer, the USL, and the NCAA. I clicked through all the MLS teams. They have multiple designs for every MLS team. So if you support Atlanta United, go to roughneckscarves.com, click on MLS, click on Atlanta United. You'll see about 3 or 4 different styles of Atlanta scarf for you to buy.
But what if people wanted to design a custom scarf, say, to like commemorate this week in the UEFA and or CONCACAF Champions League, Daryl?
I mean, that would be the type of great question that I would put on Twitter. And I did exactly that. Go. And so we've got 3 answers that we've selected, because you can design custom scarves at Roughneck Scarves. You send them the design, they'll print it up for, or I guess they sew it up for you. Knit it is the word. They would knit the scarf for you. To commemorate, the UEFA Champions League and the CONCACAF Champions League, the designs we...
Thinking about knitting over there?
Yeah, I was. Drop one pearl on it. The designs we got suggested were just Tim for now. On one side, he would have Roma covering Barcelona from one end to the other. The other side would have Juve doing the same to Real Madrid, but only for 99% of the scarf.
That is brutal and awesome all at once. That's a good one.
Depends on who you support.
Indeed. John Adams, UEFA side 1 would be wide-rimmed glasses set atop a very muscly abdominal section.
So is that... We think that's Jurgen Klopp with the wide-rimmed glasses, and Eusebio Di Francesco, the Roma coach.
Sure.
Who also has wide-rimmed glasses.
Yes.
And I don't know who that very muscly abdominal section could belong to. I don't remember seeing any of those this week.
I genuinely was confused for a second because I thought it had to be one thing. So I was like, does Jurgen Klopp or Di Francesco have a very muscly abdominal section? Now I'm with it.
Yeah, it's Ciron's.
Yes. I was scrambling to try to make a joke of like, it's Carlo Ancelotti, obviously.
No, it's Ciron's six-pack.
Yeah, there you go. Ancelotti is retired as well, so that wouldn't have worked either. CONCACAF side 2 from John Adams. American soccer Twitter booing Bradley and Josie while holding maple leaf flags.
He's kind of right. We're a little sort of confused about supporting this Canadian team with American players, aren't we, right? Hunter Saunders says it would have "You'll Never Walk Alone" with Klopp and the boys reaching out for the number 6, which I guess would be their 6th Champions League, on one side. The other side would have Pep pointing at his possession stats with a quizzical look. Hunter had a follow-up one as well. He would have Phil Coutinho saying, "I left for Champions League" overlaid onto the Liverpool side.
Yeah, I've seen a few of those comments.
Did you know he could possibly get a Champions League winners medal if Liverpool win the Champions League?
Could he really?
Yep.
Well, good stuff for him.
Because he played in the group stage.
And then he gets what he wants all along.
Yeah,
either
he gets the Barcelona money and the Liverpool Champions League medal.
I'm sure he'll be pleased. I'm sure they're equally interchangeable for him.
Well, if you would like to design your own roughneck scarf, you can do it as a fundraiser for your team or for a charity or anything like that, or just to make some money. You can do that at roughneckscarves.com. If you would like to just buy one of the scarves from the Roughneck Scarves shop, like that Atlanta scarf I mentioned, LA Galaxy scarf, any MLS team you can think of, use the discount code TOTALSoccerShow, all one word, at roughneckscarves.com. You will get a delightful 20% discount. 20% off the cost of a scarf.
There we are. So, thank you to Roughneck Scarves for sponsoring today's program. Darryl, we've got 3 more questions to get to, starting with Brian McIntyre, who asks, why does the player standing over the ball on a set piece raise their arm before running up to take the kick? Is it really necessary with the ref usually blowing the whistle to signal play on?
So I'm confused as to why Brian is asking this. Does he think that the player is asking the ref if he can go?
Maybe.
Because what I understand it is...
well, my guess would be that he's thinking the referee signals that when the whistle goes, you're going to take it immediately, is what I guess he's assuming. And so if the whistle blows, then the player's going to take the kick. Why would you need to signal, I'm going to take the kick?
So I would assume that you signal to your teammates what's going to happen. As in, like, we're going to do this type of free kick, we're going to do this type of corner kick, right? An extreme example is Alexis Sanchez against Manchester City, waving everybody forward. That's kind of an obvious one, right? But I think sometimes an arm in the air can be a sort of secret code that only the players on the team know, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. That's
it. As simple as that.
I would say, first off, though, when you're putting the reason why you'd put the hand in the air, arm in the air, and then drop it is to signify I'm about to take this. Yes, the referee may have just blown the whistle, but that doesn't mean you have to take it as soon as the whistle goes. You see that a lot. Referee blows the whistle, you wait for everybody to get in the right position. Oh, maybe that guy was at the near post and he was supposed to be far post. And as soon as you think everyone's set, then you drop the hand. That means start your runs. If you're going to make a near post run, make that near post run. If you're going to peel out to the far post.
Yeah, that's a really good point because it's all about a good corner kick or a free kick that's crossed in is all about timing, right? It's about your run putting you in the right place at the right time when that ball comes in.
Yeah.
And you can't do that by luck. It all has to be sort of like a giant machine all operating at the same time, right?
So you have to...
like clockwork.
You have to go back to your stoplight analogy. You've got to show the green light is on.
Yeah.
So there you go. But then to your other point, that like when I played, we would say like if the kick taker for like a corner, if the left hand is in the air, it might mean in the first half that it's going to the near post. In the second half, it might mean going to the far post. Right hand in the air means it's going to the far post or the near post. And then both hands could be like short corner. So you can signify a little bit about where people should be crashing to try to get to that spot when the ball comes in.
So the information is, one, the timing, like begin the run now because the kick's about to come. And 2, you're sort of communicating through a sort of coded language that's maybe not impossible to break, but it's not super easy either, where this ball is going to end up. So then everybody is on the same page.
Exactly.
On the same field. How about that?
It's really easy to break down after the fact, like we saw Liverpool do to Man City, where you can watch footage and see the team doing it. But again, in the moment when you're in the battle, forest and trees, it's difficult to be like, I'm marking my player. Am I in the right spot? Are we doing zone? Are we doing man-to-man? Oh, look, he put his hand in the air. Like, you're not going to really pay attention to that. You're going to be focused on your defensive responsibilities.
But do you think, say, a coach like Mourinho, who famously researches the opposition quite deeply, would have someone look, say they're playing Arsenal, would he have someone look at Arsenal's corner kick takers and say, left arm means this, right arm means this, both arms means this?
Maybe, or I would say equally likely or more likely is that he would have them look at tendencies of where the ball is delivered from a certain player. I mean, he has the statisticians to back that up. So when Jack Wilshere takes the corner, it 80% of the time goes to the back post. So yeah, exactly. So when he's going to take it, then we just got to make sure we defend the back post all the more rigidly. Got it.
Is that a definite example, or is that just a?
No, I just made that one up.
Got it.
Whenever I make something up, I go to Man United because it's where I feel most comfortable.
Kyle, no, I meant for Arsenal. Like Jack Wilshere doesn't always deliver to the far post, right? Okay.
Or
Kyle McElhaney, what is the history / etymology of saying a player gets a cap or is cap tied?
So first of all, I always thought, I just assumed that it was like a portmanteau abbreviation of career appearances. I just always thought it was.
Did anyone tell you that, or you just kind of
I just assumed it was like
engineered that?
Career appearances, CA, AP. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Shorten it
so he's
together.
got 10 caps, 10 career appearances.
But in actuality, which you may already know this, but I believe comes from a British tradition of you give players actual caps. I think it started at like association club level because when they first started doing it, you didn't necessarily have like regular uniforms. So it wasn't gray versus blue, but it could be gray hats versus blue hats, and that was the easiest way.
So uniforms weren't standardized, but just caps were. So you had one team of just one color cap versus another team of another color cap.
And it's, I think I'm correct in saying in like one of those early friendlies friendlies in quotes between like Scotland and England, like Scottish players were wearing hoods and like English players were wearing a certain type of cap. Like you even had different styles in there. Or cowls, I think is what Scottish players were wearing.
I read that too.
There we go.
It's amazing how far soccer has come.
Yeah, slightly different. Slightly different. And then I think even when they got into like standardized uniforms, it became more of a tradition, correct? That,
yes.
Like the English FA would reward you with a cap to say like, good job, here's a gift.
And I believe they still do. So it's kind of like, at least for the English Football Association, it is a memento for the player, a sort of a souvenir of you played in this game. So you'll get like a blue, really old-fashioned looking cap because it's still modelled after the sort of 1870s, 1880s version that will have like England versus Slovakia and the date. And you've got that as like evidence, essentially, and a keepsake that you played in this game. That's why it's called a cap. I don't believe that other countries do it regularly. Like the US doesn't do it, I don't think. But everyone else has adapted the terminology because international football starts with England, Scotland. So it all gets traced back to that. So that's why we talk so much about cap tied, especially in the US, right? Because so many dual nationals. But no one's ever asked us about why we say cap tied.
Oh, man. Now I just have this idea of like Jermaine Jones throwing out his actual Germany caps, even though I don't think they do it. But I just like that idea of like when you're no longer cap tied to a country, you have to get rid of that actual cap that you had.
You have to have a cap burning.
Yeah. And I will say it's worth looking at some of the photos of the British caps because they are just adorably British. They're just like wide-brimmed hats with like a ball on top. Yeah.
Or are you saying British for English and Scottish?
I'm saying English caps specifically, yeah. Or at least the one or two that I saw, they had like a little like puffball on top. And it was it was just cute for like, you've gone out and served your country. Here's an adorable hat.
We should start calling them adorable hats.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah? We need to get Timothy Weah adorable hat tied, for example.
That is something I want to do, and yet instantly I feel like 1-star reviews will abound.
I'm willing to risk it.
All right.
Okay. Final question?
Yep.
Okay. Final question today comes from, speaking of England, Scotland, comes from Mason Smith.
Are you just asking 2 in a row now? Is that how we're living?
Would you like to ask it?
I can't remember who asked the last one. I think I'm being catty, so I apologize. It's up to you, Dale Grove.
Meow.
What would you prefer?
You go ahead and ask it. Go on.
Mason Smith, why doesn't Celtic join the English Premier League? Is it because of the travel?
I can answer the second part. The answer is no, it's not because of the travel. The United Kingdom is not big enough for that to be a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I don't know. It depends on how you're getting around. No, yes, you're correct. It's not a problem.
Why doesn't Celtic join the English Premier League? So it's been a discussion for like, I don't know, my whole life, so at least like 30-something years, right? This has been talked about probably before that. Probably ever since Scottish football started declining a little bit and there wasn't as much money in it as there obviously was down in England, that maybe the big teams, especially Celtic and Rangers, I think we should tie those two together, they maybe should think about joining English football, hoping to get in the Premier League to be part of the big time. I think the reason I'm sort of delaying giving an answer is I think there are a lot of different answers, a lot of different reasons, even though it seems to make sense.
Sure.
So should we go through like reason by reason?
Sure. I'll start with the side that I don't usually think of in this equation because I think it's very easy to assume Celtic and then Rangers. I agree with you. You tie them together, even though they definitely do not want to be tied together. It is sort of like, historical clubs, you kind of have that reputation. Of course, everybody wants them to join, so why wouldn't they want to join? But the reality is they don't necessarily have the invitation. The English Football League doesn't want them to join as of 2017. At an EFL meeting, they rejected any non-English clubs joining the EFL in the future and also ruled out Premier League B sides joining as well.
So to give the backstory to that, this isn't about Celtic or Rangers joining the Premier League.
Right.
This is based on the idea that if they join the English Football League system, actually maybe it's worth even backing up to say there's an English Football League system, there's a Scottish Football League system. So they are completely separate at this point, right? So if Scottish teams join the English Football League system, even if they're big teams like Celtic and Rangers, there's a good chance they'd have to start at the bottom of the professional system.
Yeah.
So they'd be down the leagues.
And there's a competition, like element to that. There's also just the fact that to make room for 2 teams, you'd have to relegate 5.
Mm-hmm. Or you'd have to expand the Premier League, but then you'd have it be way too big and way too many fixtures.
Exactly.
So it would just be way too tough to do.
But I cannot imagine of a situation in which Premier League clubs, especially ones that tend to finish in the 12 to 17 range, would be like, sure, I'll relegate myself.
Yeah, turkey's waiting for Christmas, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But that same concept applies lower down the leagues, right? Because if you're, you said it was the EFL teams, the English Football League teams voted against this, or voted to not invite them, right?
Yeah.
Someone would be losing their spot
to
Celtic and Rangers, or maybe Aberdeen, or anyone else who wants to join the English leagues.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely. I think this coincided with when they were discussing potentially adding a League 3 after below
so that would
League
be
2.
A 5th tier.
Exactly.
Right?
And then it was, well, if we're going to add a new tier, should we add a bunch of new teams? Should we invite Scottish teams and Welsh teams and Irish or Northern Ireland teams to come in and participate in that league? That was where I think this vote was taken and where it was voted down.
And then the other angle to this is there's a reason why, say, the Scottish authorities do not want this to happen. I mean, one is the obvious one, that you lose your 2 biggest draws. I mean, assuming it's Celtic and Rangers, you would lose the 2 biggest draws in your whole league, right? Like if Aberdeen stay behind, they might be happy because they got a good chance, or Hibs have a good chance of suddenly winning the Scottish Premier League. But there's a lot of teams lose a lot of revenue because they don't have the sort of that big day when Celtic or Rangers come to town. So it would be tough from that angle, right?
Yeah, think about when Rangers got relegated, liquidated, what have you.
Yeah.
When they were playing in the Scottish Second Division or the Scottish First Division and then Championship.
Liquidated.
Yeah. But when they were in the 3rd tier, right? That's where they had to restart. Even then, the Rangers were on their away fixtures those were selling out because they're playing against Rangers. It's not the Rangers that maybe they've seen in the 80s and 90s, but it's still Rangers.
They were blue.
Yeah, true.
There's definitely that angle to it, that there'd be a big loss financially to the rest of Scottish football.
Yeah.
But then there's also, for various Scottish football authorities, there is the idea of Scottish independence, right? I'm not talking about the Nicola Sturgeon, political Scottish independence. I'm talking about the independence of the Scottish Football Association. And the reason, I think this gets overlooked a lot when people think about this, the United Kingdom is one nation, right? And yet there's a Scottish Football Association, English Football Association, and it's almost like they get a special pass from FIFA because soccer started there. You get this special pass to have your own individual national teams and your own individual football associations. And any sort of muddying of those lines or blurring of those lines, I think if you're the Scottish FA, if you're the Scottish leagues, you could be looking at that and thinking, this is the first step towards us being dissolved or swallowed by the bigger organisation.
Yeah,
right?
And because then you lose some of your autonomy. Oh, maybe you guys should just be Team Great Britain anymore. Maybe Scotland don't need their own World Cup qualifying.
So, for example, the 2012 Olympics, Great Britain entered a team, which they don't normally do. For the reason they don't normally enter a team is for the reasons we just talked about, is because they do not have a Great British FA. They did not have Scottish players. Scottish players were not sort of allowed or were encouraged not to participate in that Great British team for that same reason. They don't want to risk their autonomy.
Yeah. I mean, and wasn't it only Giggs did it because he was already retired?
Because he was Welsh and he's not so worried about it.
Yeah,
the Scottish players were most worried about it.
But I think it was even like Giggs did it because he was already retired from international duty. And so it was sort of even then it was like a retired player making almost like a guest appearance for a national team. But I would then add, with all of that said, that if you're looking at it from Celtic's perspective, so say everything we just said, you wash all that and they say, okay, look, we really want Scotland involved. We're going to give you a Premier League spot. So removing the whole you got to play your way up. Say they're given a Premier League spot. Look at it from Celtic's perspective for a second and think about where they are right now, which is pretty consistently winning the Scottish Premier League, which means pretty consistently
getting their ass handed to them in the Champions League.
Yeah, but still qualifying for the Champions League. So you're still making Champions League money. You're still keeping that reputation because you're constantly in Champions League. So you do get that level of player that if there's a guy who maybe wants to move to England at some point, but he wants to play Champions League, well, I'll go to Scotland, I'll play for Celtic for a while, I'll win a title, I'll be in the Champions League, I'll get a move elsewhere.
I totally disagree.
Really?
I think they would attract a higher caliber of player just by virtue of being in the Premier League.
But I think you don't get all of the honors and the ease of operation, which is the other thing that I would add, is that if you go to the Premier League, so one of my points was that you go from winning the Scottish Premier League every year or two, I would say at best struggling to stay alive in the Premier League.
To begin with the team they've got, yes. But long term, they're such a big team. They've got such massive global support. I think there's a chance for them to become a sort of superpower if they were in the Premier League.
If they spend the money. Right now, they don't have to spend as much money because they blow the other Scottish Premier League teams away every season.
True.
I mean, not every season, but you know that like they might be 9 points ahead. They might be 20 points ahead right now. That tends to be the way it goes. And so you don't have to spend as much money. You also attract Scottish players because you have that reputation.
That's true.
I think if you go to the Premier League,
think of that. If they went to the Premier League, they probably wouldn't have as many Scottish players.
Yeah.
They'd have a bunch of international players.
Exactly, and then you have to spend more money to stay alive. And I think you're more in a like Burnley situation at that point, where you have some money, you can spend it, but you're not ever going to be able to spend the way other clubs will, and it doesn't really do much for you in the long run.
I agree with a lot
from
of what
a
you
glory
said.
standpoint, not from a quality of soccer standpoint.
I agree with most of what you just said, and obviously they'd have to. They'd be not the big fish in a small pond, or one of two big fish in a small pond. They'd be sort of a medium-sized fish.
They're the biggest fish in that
right
pond, for sure.
now, yeah. But I do think there's
I say that as a Rangers supporter, by the way. It makes me sad.
There's so much. It must be so tempting because there's access to so much money in joining the English Premier League. The income you would get each year would be a massive boost just to begin with. So you really would be going up a level. You know what I mean?
If
You'd be like, it's like winning the Scottish level and going up to the English Premier League level. Yeah. So there's that aspect as well. But for all the reasons we mentioned at the start of answering this question, it doesn't look like happening. I think their best bet, if you want to just sort of, if you want Celtic and Rangers to compete in a bigger, more competitive league, is that idea of all those smaller nations creating their own like weird like second-tier Super League.
Didn't we call it like the North Sea League or something like that?
Yeah, it was called the Nordic League or something, I can't remember, or the Northern European League. I really can't remember why, because it didn't really include Denmark and Norway and Sweden.
I thought it did. I thought it was like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and like Holland maybe as well?
So I was thinking it more of sort of the Netherlands for Ajax and PSV and Feyenoord, and Portugal for Benfica and Sporting.
Maybe Belgium were in there too.
And Belgium as well for Anderlecht. And you could suddenly get a lot of sort of really famous teams into one sort of Super League, but not Super Duper League, because like Barcelona, Bayern Munich, etc. aren't there. That may be the better
OK League.
The OK League, the better than where we were.
Yeah,
that might be the better way forward. Yeah. All right. I feel like we've wandered into other territory. I'd love to revisit that whole concept maybe at some point in the future.
Yeah. I'm down for that. But in the meantime, we've got some scouting to visit. Not even revisit, but just visit. Because we've got several reports to get to, Mr. Grove, starting with John Roeder, scouting Jacob Brun Larsen, the 19-year-old Danish winger on loan at VfB Stuttgart from Dortmund. Brun Larsen was called up to and started for the Denmark U21s against the Georgia U21s. For Stuttgart, he's been a consistent second-half substitute and looked like one of their better players in that 3-0 loss to Dortmund.
Jacob Brun Larsen. John Youngblood is scouting Tashan Oakley-Booth and Rio Griffiths, two different players. An 18-year-old and 17-year-old English men for Tottenham. John says, Tashan Oakley-Booth and Rio Griffiths both featured in Tottenham's PL2, the Premier League 2. Tottenham's PL2 4-2 win over Derby County in the PL2. Tashan went the full 90 and had an up-and-down performance with possession in the middle, while Rio entered in the 77th minute and did not provide much of note. However, it's a good sign that both Tashan Oakley-Booth and Rio Griffiths are getting looks with an older age group. I can't start calling him Rio first name because there's only one Rio and it's Rio Ferdinand.
You are correct. Yeah? Spelled differently, but still I'm with you. Yeah, you can't do that. Oscar Leong scouting Michael Obafemi, 17-year-old Irish striker for Southampton. At the end of March, Obafemi scored a brace for the Southampton U23s, in a 2-1 victory over the Norwich U23s, with the first goal coming within 13 seconds of kickoff. He also featured for the Ireland U19s against Kosovo when he scored, and against Portugal. Despite that fact, he is reportedly still a target for both Nigeria, where his parents are from, and England, where I believe he was born.
Maybe he should
raised, I guess, because then it wouldn't be possible for him to represent Ireland. I don't know these things.
Maybe he should get way more minutes for the Southampton regular team, going back to Billy Harding's question.
That would probably help.
Dylan Viach is scouting Kai Havertz, the 18-year-old German midfielder for Bayer Leverkusen. Dylan says, in one of Bayer's most important games of the season, Kai Havertz and the Leverkusen youth came to play, earning a 4-1 victory against RB Leipzig, and Kai had a hand in 3 of their 4 goals. In the 45th minute, he joined the counter, sprinting through the middle and latching onto a Leon Bailey cross, volleying it from just inside the box to level the score at 1-1. For the second goal, he flicked on a goal kick to a run made by Volland and Brandt, ending in a Julian Brandt goal. For the third goal, he was part of the scrum and he headed on a Brandt free kick, ending in a Retsos goal. I don't know Retsos.
Nor do I.
All in all, Kai was all over this game and had one of his best performances to date. If Bayer can keep Havertz, Brandt, Bailey and Volland together, then the future is bright.
Two things there. One, that's a big if. And then I'll finish my second one after you say whatever you would like to say, Daryl Grove.
I was about to say, but not as bright as Bayern Munich's.
Nicely done. And the second thing I was going to say is that I'm glad you got to read that one because that set up a lot for the abbreviated one from Mike Wills scouting Julian Brandt. He sent in a great report, but it overlaps. 21-year-old German attacker for Bayer Leverkusen. Julian earned man of the match honors Monday in that 4-1 win away to RB Leipzig. He got a goal and an assist, and the win pushed Leverkusen into the Champions League spot with 5 games to go. The final Champions League spot, that is.
All right. Jeff Markman is scouting Jeff René Adelaide, the 20-year-old French midfielder for Arsenal. Jeff says, the Jeff has become a mainstay for the Angers lineup, starting in 4 of the last 5 matches for the Ligue 1 side and helping drive a bit of a turnaround in club form since joining in January. Arsenal loans don't always work out too well, but it seems that a few months in, France was just what the young midfielder needed to keep his career on track. I think I'm pronouncing Angers incorrectly because I heard a French journalist pronounce it more like Angers.
Oh, well, I was about to commend you on your pronunciation.
Yeah,
so
I'm not confident.
I agree with you and not the French journalist. And I'm sure that we're both right. See, Daryl, this is what happens when you live in the United States long enough. The way we pronounce it is the way we pronounce it. Jeff Markman scouting Reece Nelson, the 18-year-old English midfielder for Arsenal. Following Nelson's first Premier League start, reports emerged that he was close to signing a new deal with Arsenal. Even more encouraging, those reports included actual quotes from the player. Quote, "It's a big achievement to sign for a big club like Arsenal, so I'm delighted with the contract and hopeful that I can sign it soon," end quote. In addition, Arsene Wenger seemed to suggest that he would not be looking to sign any more attacking players this summer. That should go over well with the Arsenal fans. In order to provide more opportunities for Nelson and young teammates Eddie Nketiah and Joe Willock.
Is it maybe because he doesn't plan to be there?
That is a crafty way of saying that. Like, I have no plans to sign anyone.
Mark Gardberg is scouting Patrick Schick, the 21-year-old Czech forward for AS Roma. We talked about him yesterday. Mark says Schick played 72 quality, hard-working minutes in the astonishing 3-0 win over Barca. In 681 minutes, Schick has not yet
Serie A
scored.
minutes.
What did I say?
Minutes. But he just emphasized Serie A. It works for the joke that I've now interjected to ruin.
I'll start again, see if that makes it better. In 681 Serie A minutes, Schick has not yet scored, meaning that Patrick, Darrell and Taylor are all tied for Serie A goals this season.
There we go.
Huzzah.
Huzzah. Thank you, Mark. Final report comes from Steve Renard scouting Yuri Tielemans. I know what you did. 20-year-old Belgian midfielder for AS Monaco. Tielemans started as a withdrawn forward against PSG in the Coupe de Ligue final. That seems like it should be the league final, if you're going to call it the Cup de Ligue. I don't know, whatever. Anyway.
I think isn't it Coupe de la Ligue?
Coupe de la Ligue? Well, okay. Yeah. Isn't that the same thing? The Cup of the League? Like, why are you playing a league then? I'm just saying. It's confusing
it's
to
the
me.
League Cup, like in England.
Because, yeah, that's stupid too.
So what happens is the league is one organisation and the Football Association is another organisation. Mm-hmm. So you have their cup and then the League Cup.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Are you mocking me now? I feel like you're mocking me here.
Well, I'm kind of mansplaining to you.
And I appreciate it, Daryl.
I'm podsplaining.
I mean, it's justified when I say stupid things. Monaco went 2-0 down quickly, and Tielemans was subbed off at halftime. He then played 90 minutes at right defensive midfield in a 2-1 win over Nantes. He also made the bench for Belgium in their 4-0 win over Saudi Arabia. But that isn't so surprising because it's a slightly difficult task to break into a lineup that features Axel Witsel, Kevin De Bruyne, Carrasco, Mertens, Lukaku, Batshuayi, Nainggolan, Meunier, Dembele, and Hazard.
Don't make me scared for the World Cup. You're making me scared for the World Cup. England play Belgium.
Equal good.
Belgium do equal good. Let's hope England equal better. Thank you to everybody for the scouting reports, and thank you to Peter, Billy, Matt, Brian, Carl and Mason for the questions. If you would like to support the Total Soccer Show, then we support the idea of you supporting us because it helps us keep the Total Soccer Show going. You can go to totalsoccershow.com/join, and if you support us at $10 a month or more, we guarantee to answer one of your questions per month when we do our weekly listener questions show. To be very clear, we also answer non-$10 a month questions, but we like, because we mix it all up. But we will guarantee to answer one a month if you subscribe at $10 a month or more at totalsoccershow.com/join.
There we are. So thank you to everyone who did submit those questions. We have many more to get to, but we got to several today.
We
and
sure
I'm
did.
happy for that.
High quality questions as well.
Always.
All across the board. So thank you to everybody. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time with your remaining teeth to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners,
on both accounts.
Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.